not travel very far to be here. I actually live in Shadow Creek. I am CFO at Exclusive Furniture. I have about 12 years of finance experience. I have a bachelor's in economics, master's in finance, and I do accounting pretty much all day long. So that's about me. I think it's important, inshallah, before we begin today, that we sort of humble ourselves and we recognize that everything that we have in terms of risk, in terms of wealth, is given to us from Allah. And inshallah, we make dua that we are able to use that in a way that makes Him happy and brings us closer to Allah instead of taking us further away, God forbid. So this is obviously ayah from the Quran, in which Allah reminds us that indeed my Lord extends provision for whom He wills of His servants and restricts it from him. But whatever thing you spend in His cause, He will compensate it, and He is the best of providers. So, of course, whatever we learn today, whatever planning we do, whatever effort we put in, at the end of the day, Allah's will obviously is paramount. Some points that I wanted to go over today, inshallah, the keys to personal finance that I think are the most relevant to us. I kind of want to go through these points, and then if you guys have specific questions, if anyone wants to go over something in more detail, we can try to answer those questions. The first, and I think most pertinent to a lot of younger people, is kind of high school, starting in college, is how is your college going to look financially? Obviously, everybody knows the big names, the prestige, and everything that goes along with those colleges, but how does that look from a financial point of view, right? Number two, your income taxes when you start working. How are you paying taxes? How much taxes are you paying? Are you paying too much, too little? How does that work? We're going to touch on that a little bit. Credit, right? So now that you have a job, inshallah, you're making some money. How are you managing your credit? Are you paying all your bills? Are you not paying your bills? What impact is that going to have on your, opportunities going forward? Once you get your first credit card, don't treat that like free money. That's basically the point of that whole slide. Your mortgage, you're ready to buy a home. Are you going to buy a home? Are you going to rent a home? We're going to kind of touch on some key factors. Similarly with your first car, you're going to buy a car, you're going to lease a car, what are the key differences between the two? Saving for the future, 401k, are you not planning for that? Are you planning for that? What are the options and how does that look? And then finally, which I think is the best part, is the business of you, which are some like tips and tricks that I've learned over the years that I think you can benefit from today, inshallah. And again, as you guys want, you can focus less or more on any part. How many of you are in college or about to start college? Okay, one guy in college. Very good. I think that one of the key points that I wanted to make here in terms of college, and I apologize the display is a little bit off, but I can email this to anyone who wants to look at it, is obviously the college expense that you're about to sign up for. Everyone needs an education. It's absolutely vital. But what's not so clear, maybe a lot of people don't understand the financial impact that it's going to have on your future. And as you can see here, the average public school is about $10,000 versus the average private school is $40,000 a year. Now, there is no other way an 18 or 19-year-old can get that kind of a loan in the US. You can't get a car with no credit. You can't get a credit card. You won't apply for anything. But they will give you $40,000 a year for the next 4 years to graduate with a degree that may or may not give you any return. So I think it's very important that when we're viewing our college education, we look at what is the return on investment. So obviously there is a prestige, and you have big name universities, and everybody, you want to go to the best school you go into. But I think that it's very important that you make an informed decision based on how that is going to play out in the long run, right? Not every job pays the same. Not every university is going to get you the same jobs, but this slide over here kind of demonstrates how you can see a lot of the public schools are actually giving you a better return versus the private schools, especially on this side of the spectrum where you have the less competitive to somewhat competitive schools, and really all the way up to the very competitive, which are like the most elite private schools. In a lot of situations, you may be better off going to a public school. So just understanding what it means from a financial point of view, how much loans are you going to end up with when you're done with school, I think it's very important, and a lot of people in this country unfortunately aren't making those decisions based on those factors, right? You get into the best school that you can, and that's great, alhamdulillah, but in most cases you're going to have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 universities to pick between. So just making sure that you're making the best financial decision as well as the academic one. There's plenty of different tools out there for us to help pay for college, right? So the FAFSA form, that's absolutely the first thing that you need to do. Sit down with a family member, whoever is does your taxes at home, your mom or your dad. Make sure you fill out that FAFSA so that you're, availing all the opportunities that are out there. This is just a little slide showing you really how much your college is going to cost overall, the sticker price, kind of the sticker shock. A lot of private universities I know are charging $60,000, $70,000 a year. No one's actually paying that, right? So just understanding that no one is paying that and understanding what are the ways that people are actually covering their college tuition is very important to make sure that you're getting the best deal for the money that you're spending. Anyone have any questions on that? Anything? All right, perfect. So now that you're done with college, you get your first job. Inshallah, you're making good money here. We have Mr. John Smith. He's making $40,000 a year. He's excited for his first paycheck. The day his first paycheck hits, I don't think you guys can see it from there, but his paycheck is only about $1,500, right? There's $500 that has disappeared from his paycheck, and that's probably money he was expecting to get. But unfortunately, Uncle Sam came in and took $500 out of his check, right? So understanding where is my money going and planning for that is very important. Obviously you have your Medicare and your Social Security taxes that is coming out of your paycheck. Everybody in the U.S. is paying that. There's nothing you can do about that. Your federal income tax, that's where it's based on your specific income, right? So understanding how much tax am I paying on every paycheck and how much tax should I be paying. The tax return that you get at the end of the year, a lot of people get excited, hey, I got a $2,000 tax return, I got a $3,000 tax return. All that means is throughout the year you paid too much in taxes, right? You gave a free loan to Uncle Sam for the whole year, and then when he returns money that you should have never given him, we're all excited because, hey, this new check showed up, right? So just understanding that, and for some people that may be the easiest way for savings to happen, and that's fine, but I think it's very important that everyone understands the financial decisions that they're making and making sure that the money that they're putting into their quote-unquote savings is money that they expect to go into that. H&R Block is a really good website. Anyone who is getting a paycheck and is not sure how much tax they're paying, I highly recommend going to H&R Block and just playing around with some of the tools they have there so that you know how much tax you're paying and how much extra tax you're paying or how much more you need to be paying. These are some of the tax brackets. Obviously, once you start working, if you're single, these are some kind of the tax rates that you're going to be paying in the beginning. Once you get married, your tax brackets completely change. But just understanding, okay, if I'm making, let's say, $50,000, which tax bracket do I fall in? And understanding that that's the tax that you're going to be paying. So understanding this is the scale, you pay 10% on your first $10,000 and then 12% on this range. So just familiarizing yourself with these numbers and understanding why am I paying tax and how much am I going to end up paying at the end of the year. Does anyone have any questions about taxes? You have a question? All right. Any questions?
I have a question here.
Sure.
How do you determine how much taxes paid so we break even at the end of the year?
So the W-4 form, if you work just a regular job, right? You don't have your own business. You're working what's called a W-2, so you're a full-time employee. Your W-4, if you fill it out accurately, it's going to ask you questions like how many family members do you have, right? How many exemptions do you have? If you fill that form out accurately, you should come out pretty close to what your actual tax amount is. Another thing you can do is every 3 or 4 months, go on H&R Block and fill out your expected year-end income and then your exemptions. So if you have a home, any property taxes, if you have a spouse, if you have children, those kind of exemptions. And then it'll get you pretty close to what that exact number should be by the end of the year. So if you put in H&R Block that, for example, this is your paycheck, right? So you're withdrawing $322 every paycheck. and H&R Block tells you at the end of the year you're going to get a $5,000 return, you know that you're putting away too much tax. So you can go to your employer, ask for a new W-4, fill it out again so that they're withholding less amount from your paycheck. No one can tell you with absolute certainty to the dollar how much your tax bill is going to be, but you can get pretty close. I like to redo it every 3 or 4 months, but depending on how often your situation changes. And if you have a good CPA, they should be able to help you with that as well. So your credit score, once you have a job and you start spending money, there might be some bills that you've been ignoring or not paying, just hoping that they'll go away. It's very important that you keep an eye on your credit score. It's very hard to fix a bad credit score, but also a lot of people overestimate how bad their credit score is, right? So this is a scale. Your credit score, for those who aren't familiar, ranges anywhere from 350 to 850 on this scale, and this is pretty much the base score that anyone will use when you enter a transaction. So whether that's getting a car, whether that's getting a home, even some jobs, especially if you're working in the financial field, will look at your credit score. So it's very important that you keep an eye on this and make sure that you're keeping it as high as possible. Anything really over 700 is going to not be a hindrance to anything that you want to do financially. And then obviously anything over 750 is the best. These are some factors that go into your credit score. So obviously your payment history, you can't do anything about that in terms of if you've only had a card or you've only had a loan for 12 months, you obviously can't have 60 months worth of history, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing the best with what you have. Also, making sure that any past due payments, you're working with your lenders to see if they can work out anything for you, just as long as they don't deem it as a late payment on your credit score. That's the one thing that you need to avoid at all costs. Once you have a credit card, understanding how that credit card bill works. So this is absolutely the mistake that a lot of people make is, when I get my credit card bill, when do I need to pay it? How much do I need to pay it? Understanding to make sure that you're not going further into credit card debt and you're going in the right direction, right? So this is just an example of a credit card bill. You can see here it's from October 6th to November 5th, and the payment isn't actually due till December 2nd, right? So your credit card actually gives you an extra 25 to 30 days, depending on the lender, to actually pay your credit card bill. And here you can see last month you spent $337 on your credit card. As long as you pay the full amount, $337, which you absolutely should make every effort to do, then inshallah there's no interest, no fees, no penalty or such, and your new balance is $470. So do not make the mistake of paying just the $25. That is where they get you. That's where you get into all sorts of trouble with more debt accumulating. So inshallah, if anyone is in that sort of situation, making sure that you're paying as much as you can. Yes, sir.
It's even worse actually if you end up paying the minimum.
Yeah. So
there will be, I won't call it interest, let's call it the right name, which is called riba.
yes, absolutely. So this riba will keep exponentially increasing, and it will no payments that you're making are going towards reducing your principal, right? So credit cards are very dangerous because they have a very high APR, and the interest or riba is up to 25 to 30%. So there is a huge risk involved with using a credit card, right? So you're making sure that you're making absolutely every single dollar payment of everything you spend. And frankly, if you don't think that you have that sort of self-control, if you don't think you'll be able to manage that, then you are absolutely not ready for this kind of transaction. Because there are many, many people in this country in a lot of debt because of that credit card, and because of the way the riba works, it exponentially keeps piling up. So absolutely, but this minimum payment is just meant, it's essentially a trick by the credit card company to keep you feeling like you're making some sort of contribution or that you're somehow bringing your balance down. But we've seen countless people who are in the understanding that if I just keep making the minimum payment, I'll keep getting this debt down and then I can move on to other things. That is absolutely not how this works. Your credit card debt is not like your house mortgage or your car payment. This is the first debt that you want to tackle if, God forbid, you're in a situation where you're having to make those decisions. So now we're in a situation, inshallah, where we have good credit and we're trying to decide between buying a house or renting a house, right? So that's a very critical decision that everyone makes at some point in their life. Alhamdulillah, we're now in a situation where we have a few Islamic financing options available. We have guidance, residential, UIF, or if you have any other means of buying a house, if that's something that you're comfortable with, then you obviously have to make the decision between buying or renting. There's absolutely long-term is where buying starts to become a little more beneficial than renting. But you obviously need to have good credit. You need to be able to make the down payment in order to buy a house in the first place. Once you decide to buy a house, this is just some numbers to demonstrate how the financials pay out over time for when you rent versus buying. Obviously, when you rent, you have, let's say, $1,800 a month going into your rent every month, versus your mortgage is obviously going to be more because that includes your property taxes, it includes your profit sharing with guidance or UIF. But over time, you can see that your reward is substantially more financially because you're buying into your house, right? So just understanding the long-term implications of what you're doing, I think are very important. We got to make sure that we're not, avoiding the extra $200-300 because of, some short-term gain. We have to look at the big picture and hopefully benefit us long-term. Does anyone have any questions about these numbers? I don't want to go into too much detail if there's not much concern. Okay, inshallah. I wanted to touch on this point because, like I said, we are blessed now to have some more Islamic financing options in America. We have guidance, residential, UIF. Those are the two that I have personally looked into. I think there are a few other options available as well. I think the co-ownership program is something that everyone should definitely look into. Inshallah, explore that option if you are ready to buy a house. There's some very good products out there that you can use. The profit sharing model allows you to avoid interest, and inshallah, we can stay on the right side of that. Next is if you want to buy a car, right? So you have to decide, okay, do I want to, do what my parents said and buy a Toyota Camry, or do you want to buy the actual cool car, which is the BMW, right? So a lot of times, Toyota will offer 0% financing, so you're convinced, hey, there's no interest involved. This is all, on the up and up, and my Toyota payment is $800 a month. Then your friend tells you, hey, actually, my other buddy, he's leasing a BMW, he's paying $800 a month. Why are you paying $800 to finance a Toyota Camry when you can actually get a BMW? These are the numbers just to understand what happens in the long run when you do these two transactions, right? So I gave an example here for 3 years where you lease versus you finance. And again, this is 0% financing is available, inshallah. We should try to avail that when we can. But just understanding the long-term implications on our finances versus the short-term implications, right? So your immediate excitement or your immediate response may be, hey, why don't I just spend the $800 to lease the BMW when I'm paying $800 anyways for the Toyota? And we're not even, obviously considering insurance costs, repair costs, all those things. We're just looking purely at the vehicle. And you can see just within 3 years, the kind of difference it's going to start making to your bottom line. So just understanding the long-term implications of the decisions that you're making today are very important, especially since most of us here are just starting off, financially. It's very important that we understand the full picture of what we're getting into, right? It's more than just that monthly payment or that monthly difference of $40, $50. It's about improving our long-term financial situation. This is just to demonstrate. So when you lease a vehicle, does anyone understand what a lease is or how a lease works? Okay, so a lease is basically, they give you their brand new car, and they're telling you, hey, over 3 years, my car is going to be worth so much money, right? So anything is worth more brand new than it is used. So they're just telling you, why don't you just pay me what it's worth over the next 3 years, the value that I'm losing, and you can bring me the car back, and we part ways. Versus when you buy the vehicle, you're paying more because you're actually buying the whole value of the vehicle. And here, I just wanted to demonstrate like two charts, two graphs basically of BMW is the top one and the Toyota is the bottom one, right? So you can see brand new, the difference, 60,000 versus almost 30,000. And within 5 years, you can see how narrow that gap has become. So if you're going to go and buy that BMW, and that's great. Like my first car out of college was a BMW, so go for it if you want to. But what I want you to understand is the long-term implication of those decisions you're making, right? So the guy or girl who's buying a Toyota, maybe it's not the coolest car in the world, but that decision that they made is to only lose, $10,000 over 5 years, versus you've made the decision to lose almost $40,000 over the next 5 years, right? So just understanding the big picture implications of the decisions we're making today are very important. Next, I just wanted to touch on sort of retirement savings, right? So a lot of people, they may have a 401k from their employer, they may be looking to do some automated savings, and understanding the impact of pre-tax versus post-tax contributions, right? So when you put in money into a 401k or even your health insurance, anything that you do pre-tax has a beneficial implication to your bottom line, right? So in this example, I don't think you can read it very clearly, but so if you put $400 into your 401k, the deduction from your paycheck is only about $330. Versus if you try to save it on yourself, you lose the whole $400. Because any money that you put into a retirement account, 401k, health insurance, is pre-tax, which means you don't have to pay tax on that amount. So just understanding, hey, if I save money today, one, it goes out of my check before I even see it, so understanding that it's going to hurt me less, right? And then obviously you get to grow your full $400 versus only growing the $330 that you would have if you had put it into your paycheck. Anyone have any questions about this? Anything you want me to touch on?
You said you don't pay taxes, but eventually you'll end up paying taxes when you pull it for account.
Yes, so your 401k is taxable when you retire. That is true. Again, I'm not a CPA or a tax advisor, but the hope is that by the time you retire, your taxable income will be less, right? So say if you're someone in your 30s or 40s and your income right now is as high as it's going to be or going in that direction, by the time you retire and you take out your 401k over, let's say 10, 15 years, your taxable income in those years will be much less than it is today. That's in theory, right? So there's some debate over whether that's going to be true or not, but in theory that's the debate. And then also, one factor that you have to consider is if that's an extra $80 you get to invest every 2 weeks, then the return on that will help also offset some of the taxes when you pay it. So it's long term there should be some benefit there.
Excuse me, I have a question. What's the difference between traditional and Roth?
So the difference between a traditional and Roth 401k, again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I just want to make that clear. A traditional 401k is you pay tax on it when you retire, and a Roth 401k is you pay tax now. So you pay tax now, and then you put in savings, and then when you retire, you don't pay tax on it. So it's basically you have to make a decision between, do I think my tax rate is going to be higher when I retire, or is it going to be lower, which went to our point, right? So a lot of people believe that our tax rates right now are as low as they're ever going to be, right? As much as we hate paying taxes, we still pay substantially less taxes than a lot of other developed countries in the world, right? And we all know which direction the US debt is going, so someone has to pay for that, and long-term taxes could go up. So a lot of people say, hey, why don't I just pay the tax now? And, so I just put the money in the Roth 401k, I paid the tax now it's tax-free money. I know exactly how much I'm going to get when I retire, right? And also, another way of looking at this is essentially, if somebody came to you and said, hey, pay me 20% today, or pay me an unknown amount in 15, 20 years from now, right? No one would take that deal normally, but with a 401k, millions of people in America are taking that deal every day, right? So it's just what you're comfortable with, but that's the difference between the two options. I think some employers don't offer the Roth 401k, but traditional 401k is generally the first thing that they offer. Yes, sir.
So when you invest in a Roth 401k, you make profit. You make investment. When it makes money for you, would that be taxable?
I do not believe so. I'm not
That's
sure.
the advantage. That's one of the advantages.
Yes, if your gains on your Roth 401k are non-taxable, then that would be a huge advantage if that is true. I'm not 100% sure. Again, I'm not a CPA, so I'm not familiar with that, but if that were the case, that would be a huge advantage. No, so they will still match the same amount, whether you put it in a Roth 401k or traditional 401k, it doesn't matter to them because their contribution is the same. So, for example, and just to give everyone else some context, so a lot of employers will say if you put up to a certain amount in your 401k, we will match it, right? So if your employer says, hey, up to the first 5%, we're gonna match your 401k, that's free money. So at the very least, you want to put that much money into your 401k because your employer is immediately doubling that money, and your money has made 100% return right away. They're kind of gonna calculate their contribution based on your income, and then it's so. Let's say for example they say 5% of your income. So let's if 5% of your income is $100, they're gonna put the $100. It doesn't matter if you put it in the traditional or the Roth. Their contribution will be the $100. Yours will be, let's say, $80 in a Roth or $100 in a traditional. But the company's contribution will be the same. Any other questions? There's also such thing as a personal IRA. So if you don't have a 401k from your employer, or you are unemployed, or you have your own business, for whatever reason, you can open a personal IRA. So you can talk to a CPA or any financial advisor, and that's a tool that offers you kind of similar benefits. This is just one demonstration I wanted to give you. Unfortunately, it's simple versus compound interest, but it's the same concept in returns. And this is just to demonstrate the benefit of basically deferred gratification, right? So if you invest $5,000 in an instrument that's giving you 7% return, right? So we have one person who's saying, hey, I'm going to take out that 7% every year. I'm not going to leave that in my investment, I'm going to take it out. Versus this person is a little more conservative. They say, no, I'm going to reinvest that 7% every year into my investment. In 20 years, the difference is 12,000 versus 19,000. Right? So just the power of being able to say, hey, maybe I don't need an extra $100 or $200 a month. I'm going to leave that in my investment. In the long term, you can see substantially increases your return. And that's really the crux of all sort of investments that all the advisors will pitch to you. It's just understanding that, hey, just by putting away a little bit extra every month and not trying to take the benefit of that, your long-term returns become substantially more.
Let me ask you this, as we Muslims, that's riba, right?
Yes.
And that's haram, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I see some Muslims that do that, and some Muslims that say absolutely not, they completely back away from that. Our stance should be...
No, so this slide, I'm just demonstrating return, right? So it says interest, but 7% return on your investment, right? So it's not a fixed return, but anything that you invest in, if you invest in the stock market, if you invest in real estate, any halal investment that you pick, the point is that if you leave your investment and you reinvest it, how does that impact your return versus if you take out your investment every year? That's the point here. Obviously, interest is haram, and we don't want to do that. But the point is to demonstrate how keeping your money invested and reinvesting your money in the long term pays out. That could be a business. So for example, I'm the CFO at Exclusive Furniture, right? We have a return every year from the money that we make. A large proportion of our money goes into reinvesting into our business, right? And the reason we do that is because we see in 10, 15 years how substantially you can grow at an accelerated rate versus if every year the owners took out all the capital from their business and said, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this money and I'm going to let the same amount of money run in the business. So this, yes, and I apologize, it's a poor selection of slides, but this was the best demonstration of the point I was trying to make. This is sort of the homework that I wanted everyone to take away from today, just sort of understanding how your personal finances look, right? So this is something that I personally do for my company and also for myself at home, and that is a statement of cash flow, right? So anyone who's familiar with how the business financials work, it's really the same concept for your personal financials, is understanding where are my bills, how much are they due every month, and then where do I stand in terms of my bank account, right? So this is just an example that I came up with. You start with how much balance you have in your account, your paychecks are the green ones, right? So those are the good ones, the money that's coming in. And these are your bills that you know are gonna go out, right? So if you have some automatic savings that are going out, that's right there, your rent, your car, whether it's a lease or whether it's, 0% financing or whatever your situation is, your student loans, your bills, understanding how much money is going out, because you should be able to tell today, in 1 month, where is my bank account gonna be, right? So we don't wanna be in a situation where, I have this bill due next week, and suddenly my account, I only have $200 left, and I have a $1,500 bill. So keeping track of something like this really is beneficial, and I think that everyone should be doing this on a personal level. I know that this is what businesses do, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be doing this for ourselves, right? So I have like your bills column, you keep that in yellow or red, something to demonstrate that this is a number that's gonna change, right? So like this person today knows that I have essentially 2,500 left between now and zero in December, right? So we kind of need to move away from, checking our bank account before we make every transaction. This should be the ledger that tells you what you can spend and where you're going over the next, 4 to 8 weeks here. This is something that I personally update almost every 2 or 3 days. Depending on your situation, you may want to do it more or less. This is just about understanding your personal financial wealth, right? So your net worth or your equity is what the difference is between everything that you own and everything that you owe. So, we obviously want to try to bring these down as much as we can. We want to increase these as much as we can. So understanding what is our financial position, right? And seeing what direction that's going in. So whether that's a monthly thing, whether it's a 6-month thing, whether it's an annual thing, you don't understand your true picture until you put it on paper and see what it looks like, right? Every corporation in America is doing that. On a monthly basis, they close their financials. On a quarterly basis, they, release their financials. So it's absolutely important that on a personal level, you're doing the same thing so that you see what direction you're going in, right? Anyone have any questions on this? Anything you want me to go over? So that's really the gist of what I had today. Obviously, just some key points. Our financial situation is very important. Inshallah, obviously we know because of our faith that money is not the driving force, but absolutely that doesn't mean that we don't try to keep things in check and we keep a grasp on what's going on financially. So I think it's very important that we educate ourselves on all the facts and understand the decisions that we're making. Automated savings and deferred gratification, being able to save maybe $100, $200, $300 can go a long way over time, as we've shown in the previous slides. So just looking at your budget, seeing, hey, where can I maybe cut back a little bit, or where do I not need to spend so much? Inshallah, over the long term adds up to a lot. These are 2 websites that I use myself and highly recommend it to everyone. Mint is very good for tracking, personal financials over different banks and different accounts, and it puts it together for you in a very concise, consolidated field. And then creditkarma.com is perfect for anyone looking to build their credit or seeing which direction their credit is going. And then Inaya, my daughter here, helped me with all the slides, so thank her for the slides being somewhat variable today, inshallah.
Yeah, good job.
Brother Amir was going to close us out, but I guess I'll just say thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this. We know that it's after Aisha, it's late, and you guys still stayed, and we really appreciate it. Yes, and you had pizza, so if there's any left, please take it, and inshallah we'll start doing events like this once a month. So have a great one.
Thank you, Sister Bashar.
Thank you.